a lot of good places here in Baltimore as well. But there are problems, and we can't sweep them under the rug. You know, it's sort of like if you have a patient who has cancer, and you can dress them up and put a nice suit on them, and you can try to ignore it, but that cancer is going to have a devastating effect. You have to be willing to address that issue if you're ever going to solve it. And, you know, my agency, HUD, you know, has a long history here in Baltimore with the community development action grants, which were a big part of developing the Inner Harbor. I remember the first time I came to Baltimore in 1972, because I was considering whether I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins for medical school, and none of the renovations had started, and I said, are you kidding me? I'm not going to live there. But just 4 years later, they were already beginning to make progress. And then I was here to witness that tremendous progress that was made, you know, under the Schaefer administration and the Schmoke administration, and to see some of the future plans, many of which have not come to fruition, but some of which have. So there's a lot to be proud of here in Baltimore. But, you know, also as a pediatric neurosurgeon, you know, I spent a lot of time trying to give the children here in Baltimore a second chance at life, operating for hours and hours, all night sometimes, most of the times being successful, days later being in a dilemma about sending those kids back into some of the neighborhoods that I knew that they came from in East Baltimore and West Baltimore, where there were rats and roaches and mice and ticks, where there was just unabated lead problems that were having devastating effects on the mental development of young people, where there was mold. We had large numbers of people with asthma because of the mold and some of the environmental issues. So, you know, that was a problem for me, and it stayed on my mind a lot. And somehow, you know, I guess this is the way God works. I end up as the Secretary of HUD, and we can actually deal with these issues. But it's so important to be able to deal with these issues that we are willing to talk about them and that we're willing to work together. You know, we just have all this animosity all the time. For instance, you guys know you were set up on this property right here. It's a church. They say, get off of our property. You know, a church, when we're talking about helping the people, I mean, this is the level to which we have sunken as a society. And it's so important that we stop this madness, because, you know, we have some threats, but it's not China, it's not Russia, it's not North Korea, it's us. And whether we can learn how to work together and realize that we're not each other's enemies and that we have a job to do here. That's what I really want to concentrate on. You know, I've talked to the president over the last couple of days about what can we do for Baltimore. He's very willing to work with people here in Baltimore, including with Elijah Cummings. But, you know, the president's emphasis is on the people. And that certainly is my emphasis. Before I endorsed him, when I dropped out of the race, we sat down and had a prolonged talk about the poor people of our country and what were we going to do about it. And you've seen some of the results. Opportunity zones. You know, there are 149 of them here in the state of Maryland. We're in an opportunity zone right now. Places that have been encouraged have set up a program so that people can take unrealized capital gains and invest them into opportunity zones over the long term. And of course, if people are investing their money over the long term, they're not just going to walk away and be uninterested in what happens. They want a return on their investment, so they will continue to be interested in those areas. And we're already seeing tremendous progress all over the country. And that is going to occur here in Baltimore too, but we have to be willing to work together for the benefit of the people. And you look at all the things that are happening nationwide. Manufacturing's coming back, wages are up, unemployment is down. For the first time in recorded history, there are more jobs than there are people looking for jobs. Prison reform. I've been very enthusiastic about the prison reform project, and I've gone into some of the reintroduction programs. There was one in Jacksonville, and the employers were actually going into the prisons, establishing a relationship, giving people training and jobs, because that's really the key. We have so many people who enter the penal system with little in the way of education, little in the way of skills. They come out with little in the way of education and skills. What are they going to do? The same thing that got them in there in the first place. So you have to change that dynamic. And, by giving them jobs, they come out, they have a job already. And I sat down and talked to a bunch of the former inmates, and they were dressed beautifully, suits and beautiful dresses, expressed themselves well. And when they first started that program, they only had 5 employers who would give jobs to inmates. Now they have 135 and growing, because they've seen what good employees they make. Our people are our most important resource, and that is something that this administration recognizes. And we have to begin to do things to develop our most important resource. And that means, getting rid of the perverse incentives, the things that discourage people from getting married, not pulling out the rug from underneath people when they start climbing the ladder, the economic ladder. We cannot continue to do things like that. That's what's been going on for decades, and it's not helpful. And the people who are doing it, they want to demonize these efforts and act like they've been doing wonderful things. But I say, forget about the demonization. There's plenty of credit to go around. There's plenty of blame to go around. Let's be smart enough to utilize our brains and think about how we solve these problems. You look at Holland's House here, a rad conversion, public-private partnerships to convert this area very substantially. That can be done all around us. And you look at the homelessness situation. You take a city like Tokyo, which has more people than New York City. There's no homelessness there. If they can do it, believe me, we can do it too. But it's just a matter of us being willing to focus on the right things, bringing this kind of revitalization to our whole society, developing our people, providing what is necessary, and stop fighting each other. And I think we can accomplish anything. And I also want to acknowledge the presence of Joe DeFelice, our regional administrator, who has been working behind the scenes here in Baltimore and all over this region of the country to be able to get things done. And we'll be happy to take some of your questions.
Mr. Secretary, are you implying that the church was somehow acting in bad faith by not wanting you to trespass on their property?
What I'm saying is, we have a society in which people, instead of trying to be helpful, think only about themselves. That is a problem. That's the very last thing a church should be doing.
Did he want you off the property because you're a member of the Trump administration, or just because it was his property?
I have no idea. I just know that, we really have to start thinking about how do we improve things for everybody. That's my key point.
Secretary, is Congressman Cummings primarily responsible for trash, poverty, and rat infestation in these neighborhoods?
Well, again, you're talking to the wrong person about that, because I'm not one who likes to sit around and point fingers at people. I like to come up with real solutions.
What about Elijah Cummings? I heard you invited him, and he declined your request. How long did you give him notice for the invite, and why do you think he declined that?
I have no idea. I suspect he probably could not alter his schedule that quickly. That would be my suspicion.
Secretary, have you talked to the president about coming to Baltimore? He said yesterday he would do that in due time. Have you talked to him about coming here, and what would a visit by the president to Baltimore look like, and what would you like it to look like?
Well, I would love for him to come and, first of all, just tour and have an opportunity to see things that work and things that don't work. Like I said before, Baltimore has a lot of things to be proud of. there's been a lot of improvement in Baltimore over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And I would like to emphasize how that occurred. But also there's a lot of blight, and there's a lot of things that are going on that are not serving the people. And there are things that we need to talk about. And, you know, I would like for the president to actually express his heart to the people the way he has expressed it to me. You know, I think sometimes, you know, he feels that he's going to be treated so hostilely that, you know, he says, well, maybe I don't even want to go there. And if we could just sort of tamp that feeling down and all start working together, you know, I know it sounds Pollyannish, but we can. This is a matter of choice. We get to decide how we're going to act, what kind of human beings we're going to be. Nobody else decides that for us.
Right here. You come here to talk about opportunity zones. This is an opportunity zone. What are the exact plans for this area right here, right now?
Well, the thing you have to understand about opportunity zones is that they are selected by the governors because they are economically distressed areas. And what they provide is an opportunity for people to take unrealized capital gains and invest them into projects. Now, they can invest in things that they bought and own in an opportunity zone. They can partner with people who are already doing things in the opportunity zone, or they can invest in stocks of people who are doing things in opportunity zones. So, you know, there's a variety of different ways that things can be done. Some of the successful places that I've seen, like St. Louis, you know, an old abandoned foundry became the nidus for the revitalization of the whole area. And now they're bringing in grocery stores and entertainment and workforce housing. And one thing begets the next thing. So that's why it's called an opportunity zone. Provides an opportunity to bring in funding for good ideas.
So calling on investors then?
Absolutely. We're calling on investors, but we're also calling on people in opportunity zones to begin to formulate plans so that people will have something to invest in.
I have a question right here. We talk about the recent war of words between the president and Congressman Cummings, and we also in the same breath talk about that we need to come together in order to have something done. I think the people here in Baltimore have been disheartened over the last few days thinking that no one would want to help Baltimore. What do you say to the people wondering when change would happen?
Well, I think there are a lot of people. You know, one of the things I discovered during my presidential run, as I travel all over this country and to all kinds of places, I went to all 50 states, to the small hammocks, I discovered that the majority of Americans are actually decent people who are actually willing to extend their hand to other people. But they're not the people that you see on the 6:30 news running around trying to hit people and spray people. And that's not the majority of Americans, but those are the people who get all the attention. And we begin to think that we have to be on this side or on this side. And it's just not true. And, you know, what we really need to be able to focus on are results. And what we're doing, for instance, at HUD is revamping programs based on evidence. What actually works. One of the reasons that I travel around the country so much, and the reason that I talk to so many people and find out what is it that actually would help you to be able to move up the ladder of opportunity. Because it's about self-sufficiency for people. And real compassion does not involve just patting people on the head and say, there they are, you poor little thing. Real compassion is providing people with a mechanism to climb that ladder without pulling their support to get them to a place of real self-sufficiency. And, you know, case in point, before the housing crisis, compassionate, I put that in quote, people said, oh, you know, we can provide all of this down payment assistance and change the debt-to-income ratio requirements and change the credit requirements. And what did they wind up doing? Putting a bunch of people in houses that they couldn't afford. Those people lost the house, they lost their credit, and they lost their future opportunities. Today, there are fewer African-American homeowners than there were before that. That's not compassion. Okay, we have to think about real compassion.
I have a question right here, right here, right here, right here. You have a question right here.
Secretary Carson, I know the Obama administration invested in the Hollings House you referenced some $90,000. Can you speak to what your administration has done in the area, how it differs?
Well, just in the last year, when you look at all the federal money that has come to Baltimore, it's been in excess of $16 billion. I don't think there's been a lack of investment. I think perhaps we need to look at how that investment is utilized.
Do you believe money was stolen?
Like I said, we need to be able to look at how that money is utilized. One of the great things is that just within the last few months, we've been able to establish at HUD a dashboard which gives us a real-time readout of the money that has gone to each district and how it is being spent, at what level it's being spent, at what rate it's being spent. That's going to make a big difference. And before I came to HUD, there was no CFO for 8.5 years. So financial controls were lacking. Can you imagine that with the billions of dollars going through there? Those financial controls are now in place. We have tremendous, accuracy in the way that things are done. All of that's going to make a huge difference.
We have a question right here. We have a question right here.
Given that about 1 in 6, 1 in 7 folks in Baltimore actually do live in federally assisted housing, and your department has posed deep cuts on top of historically low funding, to what extent is the blight that you've talked about your responsibility?
Well, first of all, whether the department has proposed deep cuts or not, they have not occurred. So let's deal with just the facts, okay? And what we are looking at, though, are ways to get people into self-sufficiency. And that's why, there's been $43 million into the self-sufficiency program. No, $75 million to the self-sufficiency program. That's why $43 million is going into counseling programs, because what happens in many cases is people just don't have the knowledge of what to do in order to be able to take advantage of things that exist already. And they need somebody who can help to guide them through that. It makes all the difference in the world in terms of whether they default or not.
This is a blue-collar town. It was a town that was built on factory jobs and industry. The vast majority of those kinds of jobs in inner cities across the United States have moved overseas to what used to be third world countries. Is it possible to bring those kinds of jobs back to the United States through the process of tariffs and other components that the President is trying to utilize?
Thank you for asking that question. You're not a plant. In fact, as you know, it was predicted that manufacturing was gone forever, and there's been a great resurgence. Obviously, why did it leave in the first place? Because we had policies and procedures in place that made it difficult for people to work in our environment. That's why they left, because there was so much regulation, because the tax structure was inappropriate. As those things have been corrected, obviously those manufacturing jobs are coming back. And we're going to see a tremendous resurgence in that. There's much more emphasis now on apprenticeships, giving people the kinds of skills that are going to be necessary in order to be able to take those manufacturing jobs.
All right, that's all we have time for.
Okay.
Secretary Carson, you're the only black
You have to talk.
captain.
You have to talk to her.
Here, you can follow
How do you say
the
that
beats map.
Trump's comments are not racist, sir?
Right here. Follow the beats right here.
Dr. Carson, Dr.
Perfect.
Carson, how do you say Trump's
Thank
comments
you all
are
very
not
much.
racist?
Thank you for being here.